Welcome to the Wolf and Bull podcast. I am the Wolf, and I'm here with my ever charming, lovely co-host.
The Bull is in the house.
Just decided to push Baewolf's sound because, you know, we can never get it here. I can't get things right. I need to mix this up.
Am I the Irish blood that runs through
You're the Irish blood that runs through all of our veins. And we also have Baewolf, who also happens to be a bull in another life. She is,
a young calf.
A young calf.
Right?
I guess.
An Irish calf?
Irish calf. Yeah,
Is that technically correct?
No.
No.
Actually, I'm not sure.
We need to research our
Unfortunately.
bovine history.
Are you calling me a heifer?
Anyone.
Oh my God.
Bovine history is right up my alley.
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, if you happen to like what you see today, our content of The Wolf and Bull can be found on Instagram at The Wolf and Bull. I have it right down here in this cool little pinkish, bluish logo thing banner. You can also find us on YouTube. Additionally, we have most of the time, unless I fall behind, which doesn't happen too often, but it happens sometimes, our episodes come out on Thursdays, audio-wise, and video comes out on Fridays on YouTube. That might be subject to change, because I don't know if I like the Friday day, but we will talk about it. Just a quick reminder.
You can find us on any day.
You can find us on any day, yeah, as a quick reminder. And additionally, we have a wonderful sponsor. And this episode is brought to you by Americano Ammunition Coffee, serving true American patriots the means to defend their freedom, one caffeinated caliber at a time. Make sure to visit their website, ammoandcoffee.com, and grab yourself a bag of coffee beans, or visit their shop in Queen Creek, Arizona. Mention the Wolf and Bull, and at the checkout, you get 25% off of your order. So, pretty good deal.
I love that. One caffeinated caliber.
I also must say their Valentine's Day drink, beyond delish. You tried it the other day, didn't you?
Is that what it was? I had no idea.
What would that be considered?
What would it be considered?
Beyond delish?
Beyond delish.
It's super delish.
Super delish.
What does that
That's
sound?
right.
Why does that sound
I'm
like
thinking maybe they put a little ammo powder in that or something.
No, I love a good latte.
What does Beyond Delish sound like? A downtown Hillcrest restaurant?
Probably a great restaurant.
Yeah, probably really good. Yeah,
I'll tell you what. Every restaurant I've been to in Hillcrest,
it's phenomenal.
San Diego.
I was going to say hardly anybody.
San
Hillcrest. Where is
Diego.
that near? Is that near Gilbert somewhere?
No, it's San Diego.
No, it's delicious.
Well, for those of you who now know where we are located in the United States, here's the thing. How's everybody doing out there? We can do like a Blues Clues.
You didn't ask me at all.
We ask you every episode. This isn't about you. This is about our viewers and listeners. We can do like a Blues Clues thing.
About me. What do you think of me?
Well, I hope everyone listening just said out loud how they're doing.
Yeah, good.
So we were
it's like
able
Blues
to
Clues.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead and talk. But yeah, I think it's going to be a good episode. We got some cool things in store for you. Some wonderful topics. The Bull is doing phenomenal and he's dancing. Baewolf is Irish as normal.
It's time for mailbox.
It is time for the mailbox. And with that being said, it's also probably time for the monologue. So I'm going to go ahead and push that wonderful button.
Go for it.
Recently, Mr. Beast, a YouTuber with over 131 million subscribers, made a video titled 1,000 Blind People See for the First Time. The video was met with mixed reviews, and many people praising the video and the positive impact it made on those 1,000 people's lives. Alternatively, the video also received some backlash from individuals who claimed that Mr. Beast is demonic and that he exploits people for content, believing that he acts for financial gain. These allegations are unsurprising, as are the positions that the Twitter talking heads hold. Unhappy people virtue signal, especially when they see something that they don't like, especially something positive, simply because they're unhappy. They won't do anything on their end to change someone else's life unless it involves talking about how much better they are in comparison to those around them. Unironically, these same people criticizing Mr. Beast are critical of nearly every facet of society designed to help others, unless, of course, it involves the government, a celebrity they worship, or themselves. My general question is this: why do they care? It's not like they're friends with Mr. Beast, so it's a little confusing to me. In addition to Mr. Beast's news, a company owned by supply chain called Resolink released a report about a week ago revealing that the top driver of supply chain disruption in 2022 was factory fires, compared to 2021 disruptions affecting supply chain are over 32% year on year. In 2022, there was 3,609 factory fire alerts, an 85% year-on-year increase, the most ever recorded in a single year. The timing on that one, mixed with the government shutdowns, war in Ukraine, and La Rona, is quite interesting to me. On top of the factory fires, many have also started discussing whether chicken feed companies have altered their product to stop backyard hens from laying eggs, which will drive up demand for commercial eggs or cause people to switch to plant-based alternatives. It's not like Bill Gates invested in Beyond Eggs in an attempt to take animals out of the question and the equation in 2013. Or that celebrities are showcasing their desire to eat bugs so that we too can eat bugs, so that they can continue to eat their Wagyu tartare at their eyes wide shut parties. It's all likely coincidence. So today, we're talking about the problem with parasocial relationships and the recent news concerning factory fires and the chicken feed conspiracy. I, again, am just all over the place.
You're fine.
I want to see how these things all come together.
These
in
are
a
three
conflagration, which is a fancy word for fire.
Very nice.
Yes, how about that?
Yeah, I like these three hot topics.
You really shouldn't do that when I have a mouthful of hot tea. I could have just spewed it all over my microphone. Well, but yeah, these topics are going to be interesting.
As far as Mr. Beast is concerned, I mean, there's an old lyric to a song. You can't please everyone, so you got to please yourself, right? And of course, that can be taken in many different ways. And for those out there more interested in other types of podcasts, you can look into that. But the fact of the matter is you gotta. What are you laughing?
Just go ahead.
No,
I'm just. I love that quote.
You gotta please yourself. It's all right now.
Yeah.
Learn my lesson well. You can't please everyone, so yeah.
Someone just turn on the oldies.
Hey, I am an
I love
oldie.
this station.
I am the oldie.
I interrupted.
No,
so
back to your point. My point is that whatever you think of Mr. Beast, you've got to look at yourself and are you doing something that you want to do that you think is good for some reason? Now, if a counter to that is that you're going to make a bunch of money doing that too, who the hell cares? And I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yeah, that's the kind of the position that I hold. Now, whether Mr. Beast is demonic or not, frankly, in my opinion, is beside the point.
Listen, everything is demonic in today's day and age. That's what I hear, at least on all the very, very up-to-date scientists on Instagram. You know the ones.
Yeah.
Every person knows everything about everything demonic.
This is so great. This is really good. First, frankly, outside of the Mr. Beast, I don't know. Outside of the Mr. Beast demonology, I think we need to evaluate what people mean when they claim that he is exploiting people, as I mentioned in my monologue. Now, obviously, there are some definitional terms here. Exploit literally means an act or deed, especially a brilliant or heroic one. So if they mean that he did something well, then I can agree with that because that's what he did. He healed 1,000 people's eyes.
Exploitation is a heroic deed.
That's literally what exploit means, is that. Now, the term or transitive verb version of that is to make use of something selfishly or unethically.
So that's where I've always thought of it.
Yeah, well, English is weird. Now, the latter is likely what people and critics are implying about Mr. Beast. And secondly, in addition to what people mean in relation to exploit when they utilize the term, we should also evaluate the purpose of the video. Now, I would determine that it was to heal people with money earned from previous views of other videos, making content that will get a high number of views, furthering the Mr. Beast train of sponsored philanthropy. Now, some people have a really big problem with sponsored philanthropy. I'm really not too sure how I feel about it because there's a lot of it out there and some of it is kind of unethical. But what I will say is I'm pretty sure every single one of these people was contacted by Mr. Beast and or reached out to him in some way, shape, or form. Or maybe they're all paid actors. But either way, they were informed about what was about to happen and they all consented to it. Otherwise, Mr. Beast would have a very large legal problem on his hand. So
I think he kidnapped them, strapped them down in a dark warehouse.
Probably.
Carved out their eyeballs and put new ones in there.
And they were like, oh, God, no, I can
Trust
see.
me, I'm an expert.
With
Trust
a
me.
number.
Yeah.
You need to
that's
cut
what
that. Yeah.
the Beast would do.
Yeah, probably. Now that's back to the demonology aspect of Mr. Beast. Is Mr. Beast a demon? Probably not. Now, I have a real big problem, honestly, with people who look at something like that and they criticize it. And the reason I say that is because there are just significant amounts of instances in our society that are very similar to that. For example, nonprofits, for-profit entities. I know some charities operate in a way that they somehow make money. Not every single thing that is considered philanthropic or altruistic is absolutely free. So I don't know what the qualm is here. Additionally, reporting the thing that you got from Mr. Beast, such as the cash or the gift or all that stuff, he provides them with alternatives there. And that is kind of something we all do anyway every year when it comes to tax season. So I'm really not sure what the argument or qualm is here. It just seems kind of frivolous. It doesn't seem unethical to me.
Bill? Because I think there's definitely a component of this, but it's driven by the people that want to be haters, not the person trying to look. We're not foolish enough to think that people do things for absolute free.
No.
I mean, it's very, and certainly those that do are usually trying to leave a legacy. They're usually older. Mr. Beast is what? I don't know, late 20s, right?
Late 20s, early 30s.
So, but that's neither here nor there. Maybe he's already trying to do that. I don't know. And it sounds like something he did was good for people. He paid for their surgeries, correct? Isn't that what happened with that?
Yeah.
So he paid for surgeries. I mean, people donate to all kinds of philanthropic, nonprofit organizations. Think about Doctors Without Borders. They go all over the world to fix cleft palates on people and things like that. Wheelchair Mission, which we've been involved with in the past. They create these wheelchairs, very inexpensive wheelchairs, and ship them all over the world to get people off of the ground. There's a million wonderful things. And I don't know, maybe there's some notoriety that the people that start and do these things gain from that. Maybe there is a podcast that gets very popular because of it. Maybe there's online social media aspects that are good for those people because of that. But are they doing it because of that, or are they doing it because they want to help?
I don't think it matters.
That's a good point.
I don't think it matters either way.
I think they're
not mutually exclusive, right?
Well, I have a funny, not really story. This guy and I, years ago, probably 10 years ago now, we were on the Chapman University campus in Southern California, and we were about to get in our car going to get food or something, and this guy came up to us. I can see this guy over here is looking, and he's trying to remember exactly what store I'm about to say. You might remember. We were getting in our car, and this random guy, never met him before, don't know his name, he didn't introduce himself, came up to us, and I don't know if he was actually doing a legitimate study or just kind of asking, but he came up, and another guy was with him, kind of rolling his eyes, and he said, "When we give things to people, are you doing it out of altruism, or are you doing it because you just want to feel good?" And do you remember this?
No, I don't, but that's a really dumb question.
Well, he was, and it turned into this.
It's a dumb question.
I'm surprised you don't remember, because you were really going back and forth with him about it. And it's
I
kind
have
of funny
no
that you don't
recollection
remember
of this at all, yeah.
Yeah, and he was asking, basically he was making the argument that no one gives anything for the actual person that they're giving it to. They give it to make themselves feel better, in a roundabout way, was his argument, and you were arguing against that.
Okay, so I can remember what my position would be, and I'll summarize it with this. Why is it that everyone thinks that two things can't be true at the same time?
Exactly.
What is this? What is it? I hate, I'm getting passionate because it bothers me, because it seems to be as if everyone thinks we are all just one-dimensional nodes within a system that can't operate without some level of personal agency or without someone telling us what to think. Maybe it's both. Maybe we can do both at the same time. And I don't remember that conversation. I can probably attest to it being real, because I can imagine me saying that exact same thing. Sure. But I don't know why people have a difficulty with that. I really don't.
Well, if there's an expectation for reciprocation, therein lies the issue with giving and getting, in my opinion. Always has been my opinion, because now, is there a sense, a release of endorphins or a feel-good sensation from a humanistic standpoint when you give something of yourself to someone else? Yeah, I would say so. The question is it independent of an expectation of return from them?
I think
because that's where this Mr. Beast thing goes, right?
Well, yes, but I also think the particular issue that people took with Mr. Beast is kind of silly, because isn't he the most subscribed creator on YouTube right now?
Yeah, he's one of them.
And how did he become that way? Because he does this exact same thing. I would personally, I have not benefited directly from anything Mr. Beast has done. However, I would personally rather see him do something like this than just give away a bunch of Teslas.
Well, again, I guess my biggest thing is what do people expect the alternative to be? People don't
Give away a bunch of Teslas.
Well, no, but think about this.
That's the alternative.
This is a valid question. The alternative is give away a bunch of Teslas, but on behalf of who? If Elon Musk does it, they'll get mad at Elon Musk. If some political individual, Donald Trump or Joe Biden, does it, they'll get mad at both of them. If the government does it, one side of society is going to be in total, unabashed, admirable support, while the other group of society says that we're being taken advantage of.
Well, I guess
which one is it?
Everybody always looking for the dark side of these things.
But it's not about the dark side. It's hypocrisy at its finest from the individual criticizing is what I'm saying. Because if I'm sitting down and I'm supporting the government with free initiatives from people, myself, taxpayers who don't necessarily sign up individually for those taxes, if I'm supporting a government for doing that, then I should be totally okay with Mr. Beast doing something like that. Well, because he makes a ton of money. And the government, guess what? Takes your money and utilizes your money to put into various programs.
And they take a portion of his too.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, I mean,
there's no difference.
There's always hypocrisy out there. There's always critics, and typically when critics become very, very loud and illogical in the manner of which they're distributing their criticism, you usually have to look behind the curtain to see that there's something more going on. And it is almost as always, and we've talked about this a million times, it's almost always, virtual signaling or some kind of collective freaking hypnosis going on with something in our society that's directionalized by another
entity.
And and it's unfortunate, but it's kind of the way things sway back and forth in pendulum. And it often frustrates me, as it's frustrating you, because can't we just let things be sometimes? Can't we just see how they roll out, see how they create additional things? I mean, 1,000 people? Was it 1,000?
1,000 people.
1,000 people regaining
vision from a $10 procedure.
I mean, that's freaking fantastic. I don't know. I don't. If the guy makes millions of dollars more because of that,
well, he throws it all back into his videos. I mean, he said that multiple times in interviews. And frankly, look, this might sound like I'm like a huge Mr. Beast fan. I do enjoy his videos, but I would not omit criticizing him if he did something wrong. I think that, I don't think any of us here have any position to not believe what he says. No reason to do so. And so when I hear and see stuff like that, it just gets me, because I really have, and I think this comes back to a narrative that's been prominent in society of people conflating the operation of business with the ethics of an individual. I have a major issue with that, not because I think businesses should get away with everything.
It's because people are demonizing profit motive now.
Well, yeah,
that's the scenario that's going on in our society today.
Then you can look at that same person demonizing it and say, okay, well, why do you go to your job?
I get what you're saying, but I'm just saying that's the thinking that I think is being pushed out.
Well, at the end of the day, Mr. Beast runs a business, and the business purpose is to make content to continue staying a business. I'm not sure why we have to explain this. This is not rocket science, and frankly, I don't like explaining it because it makes me sound like a condescending person, and I'm not. So when it comes to this type of stuff, it just bothers me that we tend to do that, because frankly, there's a point where people are worth criticizing. Like, say, for example, if you're Bill Gates, he's worth criticizing in some areas because he has outgrown the business that he now used to be a part of, and he is utilizing his profits in a way that could be seen as unethical in some ways, and same in some instances as Mr. Beast. I can understand that. With that being said, if Joe Schmo, who runs a regular business, has to hold his ethical principles on his arm while he also runs his business and tells everyone about what he personally believes, then what is the point? Because the workers don't have to do that. The worker base doesn't have to hold themselves accountable to their nonsense.
Well, sometimes they do. Human resources are involved.
Yeah, sometimes. Not as much as the owner.
I guess it's all just perspective. I mean, every bit of this is. Anybody who makes any type of money more than the next person typically is held in some sort of standard that oftentimes cannot be measured up to. And think about, someone like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, all these, billionaires. I mean, it doesn't matter what they do or say. And I'm not sitting here trying to defend them like I don't really care either way. But the bottom line is, no matter what they say or do, there's going to be criticism. There's going to be people who think that they could do it better if they had the same amount of wealth and power. It's just all
which they'd be wrong. I hate to say that, but almost every single, it's like the people who said they would run the country better if they were in that position.
Well, think about Sam Bankman-Fried. Sam Bankman-Fried was a billionaire at one point. Was a very, very a darling in the billionaire community in America less than a year ago. And he said over and over again he was going to give away all of his wealth. Everyone loved him because he was this very altruistic, very liberal, very just all around good guy who ended up screwing over millions of people, allegedly.
No one criticized him until he got caught doing something. So I guess the confusing thing the thing that confuses me the most is people will criticize, Mr. Beast, but they'll look at something like any of the celebrities they like and they don't have a question. Any political person that they like, they don't have a question for that person. They just ignore it. If you're going to criticize everyone, criticize everybody. Don't just criticize people you don't like. I criticize Donald Trump and Joe Biden equally. I don't like either of them. I criticize politicians equally because I don't like them. Not because I don't like them as people, but because I don't trust the position that they hold. Same thing with celebrities. I don't know them from Adam. And if they tell me to do something, I'm going to criticize them for telling me to do something because they wouldn't listen to me if I told them to do something. So it just seems like this double standard, which, by the way, is really immature. It's not even immature. It's a major issue. And the thing that I think it comes back to is virtue signaling. I think that's the main problem here. And frankly, this is my opinion, so please take it with a grain of salt. I personally believe people who virtue signal are incredibly unhappy. And the reason I think that that's the case is because people who care about what other people think to such a high degree as that are normally unhappy with themselves. Thus, they're trying to please other people in order to get some sort of personal gratification and fulfillment in that they are worthy in those people's eyes. People who are happy with themselves don't give an absolute flying F about other people's opinions. They don't.
Well, all you have to do is watch somebody that's doing that kind of criticism or that kind of virtual signaling, and whether it's online or in person. In person, if they criticize you and then kind of look around them, they're looking for, that
validation.
Exactly. And if they're doing it in an online forum of some sort, then they're looking for validation from other people around them. That's what they're doing, and they will taper their message to get that echo.
Yeah.
Right.
And the last 5 years or so is probably the most I've ever been subject to or witnessed virtue signaling. And it's a consistent problem. Frankly, I consider it the emotionally and ethically devoid sibling of Keeping Up with the Joneses. That's what I consider it. It's the same type of thing.
Let me frame it like this: is as so many people have come to, their homes. And I saw this thing where someone was talking about how most people, I don't know how true or valid psychologically this is, but most people have three places, right? They had, home, school or work, and then it used to be church or somewhere else they would go. And that was sort of what their life revolved around. And then it would deviate, for vacation, or I'm going to my friend's house, or just something like that. And now most people have one, maybe two. And so they feel like their life has gotten a lot smaller in some ways. So I would expect when you say virtue signaling, you mean a lot online.
No, I mean, yes, online, but also in person. I think it happens equally.
Okay. Well, I think most people interact with other people online rather than in person. At least in my opinion, these days, people have a larger circle online than they do in their immediate, maybe their immediate family.
People are also more courageous online.
That's
right?
for sure.
Well, there's no repercussions this way.
Exactly.
Well, there's repercussions, but it's easy to be anonymous online, I guess is the better way of putting that. Oftentimes when people put their name and face out there are repercussions, and you can get backlash, and you have to be sort of mentally tough to deal with that.
How many times in business have you gone back and forth with people via email over some contentious issue, and you think the person on the other side is just horrible, they're wrong, they're saying it all wrong, they must be impossible to deal with, and then you finally get on a conference call or on the phone with them, and they're just sweet as all can be.
Often pleasant. and almost always just as frustrated as you are with the situation, more so the situation than you as the person.
Right. So this goes back to something we've talked about many times in many episodes: the loss of connection in the transfer of the type of communication we have that has inhibited real true relationships in the understanding we have with each other.
And that's kind of where I was going towards, is virtue signaling almost a way of just community today. I mean, think about most communities in the sense of like clubs and stuff, they have some sort of shared values, or they have some sort of shared,
Secret
morals.
handshake.
Yeah. They got the secret handshake. Would, quote, virtue signaling online be a way of just bonding?
I don't think it's to that extent. I think it's a form of, I think it's a form of tribalism. I definitely do think it's that. I think it's something that people utilize to make themselves in a lot of ways appear better than those around them. I don't think that you can build community around it. If they believe that there's a community around it, I'd love to be invited to Virtue Signalers Anonymous. I think that would be a fun thing to go to, so I could actually talk to these people in person and ask them the questions that they deserve to be asked. Like, why do you dislike everything so much? That's a really good question. Why are you unhappy? What can we do to help you? But other than that, because the difference, here's the thing. Actual criticism normally has substance and something people can change. And if I want to criticize somebody, I'll sit down with them and I'll actually explain to them, look, I think this is what you do well. I liked this. I didn't like this. People who are virtue signalers never ever provide the accurate criticism required for something that can help people become better. They only attack the character and they only attack the substance of the action.
Does virtue signaling mean that you are attacking or criticizing? I thought it would mean almost... when I think of virtue signaling, I would not think of a put down.
That's exactly what it is, though.
Okay.
Well, it can be.
I would consider it saying, like, I do this. It's not about you not doing that. It's I do this. I do this kind of work. I believe in this.
I believe in
this.
But
then people can take it a step further, as you're saying, as a put down, saying, I do this and you don't, and that makes you bad.
Well, I don't even think you have to say what you do. I think that we've gotten to this point where people just assume that by virtue of criticizing someone for something that is perceived to be bad, they are thus better than that person.
See, isn't this? I'm kind of in Bale's camp here, that it's in part because there's this need or this draw to be part of a community. Maybe community is the wrong word in this terms because it's a virtual one and it's broadened in the edges of it when you virtual signal to become part of that community. Maybe it's a different ethnicity. It's a different, a code that people live by. Maybe it's a different geography. Who knows what it is you're signaling about, but you're becoming part of this larger group that may or may not really be true, because it may be that 70% of the people are all virtual signaling the same thing, which makes everybody think they're all part of a club that none of them are part of.
Well, I think that's the question then, because if it is really a part of a group, then we'd have to be able to distinguish that group from everything else. And so far we can't. It's distinguished as haters. So people normally, at least in my experience, again, this is opinion, from my experience, people normally cherry pick what they virtue signal about or criticize. And the reason I guess maybe I'm conflating some things, but the reason I'm doing that is because I think they go hand in hand. Criticism today is no longer, in my opinion, valid criticism. It's not, because it has to have that alternative of this is what can be done on your end to change it. If you're going to just call someone an idiot because you think they're an idiot, you're being kind of ridiculous.
Well, that's
you know
not
what I'm saying?
Criticism.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying. So most of these criticisms, especially on Twitter, are not really real criticisms. You don't like Mr. Beast because he healed 1,000 people. Okay, explain.
There's where people are absent from that.
Then it's not
they
a
don't
criticism.
want to explain. They just want to be part of the crowd that's on this side of the aisle.
Virtue signal.
One of the criticisms that I think I heard was that they're considering it like a white savior complex type thing.
Oh my God.
So see, this is, again, that's not a valid criticism, because you have to be able to explain what that even means. You can utilize, like, I can utilize vague non sequiturs like that because that's what it is. But that's not a criticism. If I sit down with you and I say you have a white female savior syndrome, I have to explain what that means to me so you can understand it.
Maybe the problem is we're using this term criticism a little too loosely. Maybe it should just be simply point of view. Let me give you my point of view on this. I'm not being critical of your point of view because you have your truth, right? And that's everybody's these days.
I think that would still require people to explain themselves, and they don't today.
There's the issue. Here's my point of view. You say this is your point of view. Please explain.
Yeah, unfortunately, the internet is not exactly the best place to foster good, constructive.
Well, therein lies the issue we were talking about before.
In most circles.
And I'll tell you what, back to a previous episode we were talking about with gaming, and in particular, gaming that is done collectively online is probably a better area to produce a community of similarities between people where they can actually conduct these kind of exercises and these kind of thought processes.
Oh, they do, but it doesn't work. Believe me, I've been a part of it. It doesn't work.
But it's got to be better than what we're talking about.
It's worse. The community, yeah, it is worse. 100%. It's so toxic. And I think that brings us to our second segment, parasocial relationships. Now, I think there's something that needs to be said specifically in relation to this, because again, parasocial relationships, I think, are very prevalent in today's society, and they are quite a problem, especially in relation to individuals like Mr. Beast. Now, for our listeners and viewers, a parasocial relationship is a one-sided relationship in which an individual forms a connection with a media figure, such as television or an online personality. This connection can be quite strong and can lead to feelings of familiarity and even intimacy, despite the fact that the media figure is not actually aware of the individual's existence. They are largely driven by the media figure's ability to create a sense of social presence, which is the perception that the media figure is present and interacting with an individual. They are often temporary and tend to dissolve once the media figure is no longer active or the individual loses interest. They're more likely to develop among people who feel lonely, lack of social support, or have difficulty forming real-world relationships. And it's also important to note that parasocial relationships are not inherently negative. They can provide a sense of companionship and connection for individuals who may or may not have it in their real lives. Now, I'm not implying that the critics of Mr. Beast are suffering from an odd parasocial relationship with him. They're not. They're likely grifters or outspoken people looking to capitalize on their own public image through virtue signaling or some form of backwards criticism. There are many people, though, who are incredibly lonely, and they develop relationships and images of people who they appreciate that are simply inaccurate, because the image that is portrayed by these individuals that they so appreciate isn't actually a depiction of who they are in real life. This in turn fuels the fire of an unhealthy perception of public figures, and the people who helped sell you on these public figures are aware of that, and they utilize that to their benefit. So it's kind of a game within a game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the parasocial relationship thing. I think I may have some personal experience with that. I mean, there's definitely been celebrities that I've had like a fixation on, not in a like super scary, disturbing way. Like nothing that scary.
Adam Stalker.
Just enough to where at my bachelorette party there was a giant cutout of Kylo Ren. But
Adam Driver.
Okay, can you stop?
Adam Driver.
Jeez,
touched on a note there.
All I'm saying is, also, I think that does reflect a little bit on an emotional state of somebody when they feel like they have a parasocial relationship with a character or even a real life person. People definitely take it way too far. I mean, just think about like the harassment that celebrities can go through because somebody decides that I know them, like, and when I see them out in public, I'm going to make sure that they know who I am. Like, I'm going to follow them. It's not just, I'm going to ask them for a photo. It turns into really dangerous stuff.
Well, I don't think that is always the case. I think that's the outlier scenario of parasocial relationships, the very extreme. I think something that is probably side adjacent, which I think is a main problem that a lot of society suffers from, is an incorrect view of celebrities. I think we've gone from this place of someone like Tom Cruise being an entertainer who is an actor, who, yes, is in a lot of ways incredible because he does a lot of his own stunts, so it's kind of cool. But outside of that, like, he's just an actor. And even though, yes, he runs Scientology, and if he were to step away, Scientology would fall apart, he also is just a person.
I think I want to add real quick, though, because it's not just celebrities that have this
public figures.
Not even just public figures. I mean, the social media, the ability to see clips of people constantly, whether they're famous or not. I mean, there are plenty of non-famous people that are on social media constantly that have a relationship with a growing number of.
And we are now in quarantine because the bull is.
Sorry about that.
Wow.
Anyways, they have relationships with a growing number of people, and they develop these assumptions about these people that they've never met.
Yeah.
Ever.
Well, and that goes back to Mr. Beast, because it's none of us know him, and every single interpretation or perception that we have of him is from something online or something written about him or the opinion of someone else. So the image that we have of him is inaccurate, to say the least.
Especially with influencers and like with the people like Mr. Beast who really made a name for themselves on YouTube. Like, I look at it this way. You brought up Tom Cruise, to name a couple others that I would say are kind of clumped in these, quote, Hollywood stars. It's not really the same anymore because a lot of these celebrities have really captured the idea that parasocial relationships, while they can become dangerous, they're what fuels a lot of the celebrity of today. Yeah. And before, well, it always existed. There was almost a veil between the celebrities of decades ago and today. Now you can go onto Instagram and you can watch, name a celebrity clean their dishes while they explain something to you, and it's I met
somebody a couple of weeks ago that looked at me, did a double take, and then asked me specifically if I knew the wolf.
Oh yeah,
dude!
And I said,
oh my god!
Yes,
Again, the dad joke thing's going to go across the screen over there for him. That was cute. That was very cute. That was a good cutesy one. That was really good.
They said
I don't even know where to go with that.
You're such a celebrity.
What? No. No. I guess the biggest thing that I
shuffles it off.
Jeez. I think the biggest thing that I get from this whole scenario with Mr. Beast is just the unhealthy nature of relationships with celebrities, because I agree with you that there has always been maybe a stardom factor to things, but it has gotten to the point, to your point, where it's become something more than that. You used to think that someone like Tom Cruise is good because he's a really good actor and you like his movies. Now you like his movies, you think he's a really good actor, and you also like his positions that are all listed very unironically on his website of what he supports, what political identity he's a part of, and who he identifies from any perspective
and it's
whatsoever.
Not like, oh, I just go and see his movies and I love listening to this music. No, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is watch the stories of the top 10 celebrities I follow on Instagram. And their stories are very personal. Sometimes they're not even wearing makeup, but they don't have filters, so they're so relatable. They're so relatable. Oh my gosh, I see them more than I see some of my friends, because some of my friends don't care to post on Instagram. So I see more from this celebrity. I'm not even trying to judge people who do that, because I have celebrities I follow on Instagram who I see all the time, and sometimes it's like, I can't believe I know more about this celebrity's life than I do some people I've known my whole life, from school or something.
Well, to not be like, because I'm not trying to get from like a theological perspective on this, because I really would rather not have that conversation, but it is very much an idolization of somebody.
We deify people.
It's a deification.
100%.
But
and those who recognize it capitalize on it. And there's also some celebrities who purposely stay away from it. And it doesn't even matter. Okay, Keanu Reeves. You guys are fans, right?
Yeah.
I'm a fan. Mm-hmm. We love John Wick. Okay. Him and his partner just recently filed a restraining order against someone who's been stalking them pretty aggressively for the past, long time. He almost has zero presence on social media. He's just a actor who kind of stays away from it. Mm-hmm. He does his interviews and stuff, but he's a relatively he's got an online following. Mm-hmm. And even someone like that can't avoid it. Well, and that's obviously that's taking it a step further than what we're talking about. That is criminal behavior.
That's a whole. I think that goes into a whole different category. But again, I get your point, and that's kind of the criticism I have, because you look at let's bring up the recent thing with Sam Smith that happened this week. For those of you who don't know or forgot that the Grammys existed, because I do every year. Apparently there was a total hell-themed version of Sam Smith's song. I don't remember who he sang it with, called Unholy. I don't, just say it out loud. What are you voicing it to me for? I
was just going to say that I'm just pretty sure. I don't know much about Sam Smith at all, but that song's the one that's popular on Instagram. Yeah. Okay. Obviously, there was a whole backlash. People are pissed off because it was basically seen as Satan worship. The whole literal Satan, Sam Smith's running around on stage with Satan face. It's this whole thing. And I look at something like that, and this is coming from someone who has come from a theological background. I look at something like that and I say it's a performance. Now, granted, there are some caveats there. On one side of the aisle, people are saying, especially in relation to Sam Smith, that he's a Satan worshiper, that
he's definitely sacrificing people like he's demonic, like people said that Mr. Beast was demonic. And frankly, if he is one, he's doing a darn good job of proving that he is one. I frankly would think that you wouldn't want to do that on TV. Now, additionally, he's also at the Grammys, continually declining social event that no one seems to care about anymore, per my comment about never knowing when it happens. This was likely all rehearsed. It was likely all cleared with the people running the show, and then let loose on society for people to freak out over and talk about, just for views. And
which was the reason it was done, right?
Exactly. Now, ultimately, this was all done for attention, and that attention translates into money for the Grammys, money for Sam Smith, and yada, yada, yada down the line. These people know what they're doing. They do it as a career. Now, is it demonic? Probably, sure. A lot of things are demonic in society that we don't even consider might be demonic. Now, it's also a clearly designed attempt at attention, much like with the Will Smith slapping Chris Rock on the face situation. No repercussions for that, and everyone talked about it for months. All these live performances, you forgot. All these live performances are rehearsed. Lady Gaga jumping out of the sky during the Super Bowl was not spontaneous. And I would guess back in the 70s, Ozzy Osbourne biting the head off of a bat was also not spontaneous either. These are things that I think are done with intent. Now, am I saying that they are not Satan worshipers? No, I'm not, because I don't know, and neither do you. We have no idea. No idea at all. I mean, a lot of people would consider me, with all the stuff on my arms, a Satan worshiper 20 years ago. So I'm not. I don't think I am. I I've blacked it out if that's the case, along with that one guy from Chapman. But it's one of those things. Now, on the alternative end of the spectrum, on the alternative aisle, literally should just be called the left-leaning aisle, there is a whole other side acting as if the normalization of provocative performances like that, something that children watch, because it's advertised as such, doesn't have any net negative at all. In fact, the alternative side of the aisle is so gung-ho about poking fun at people who they think are simpletons that they'll vindictively do it at every chance they get, until, of course, their own social theology gets criticized. Science, LGBTQ, education, big business, government. Until you criticize that, we get to criticize you. And it's quite hypocritical, in my opinion. They don't seem to realize that we all happen to live in the same country, despite personal perception, and that they too have to deal with whatever the fallout is of these problems that are of overtly expressive individualism, which we've talked about on this show before, which is eventually leading, and in real time leading, to the decay of community, something once supported by theology and civic morality that doesn't exist anymore. And to these people, it won't avoid you. So I don't really know what the ideas here are, because it's same coin. We're on the same coin, guys, and you guys are on the same different sides of the coin, and you keep doing the same things to each other. Celebrities are merely conduits for control. They're normal people who happen to have a particular talent that is then built on by a team of people and exalted to a point of nonsense. It's no longer about providing something of value to the audience, per a quote from Baewolf a little bit ago. It is not in this episode, last one. It's about an experience. A perfect example of this is the movie The Menu on Netflix, starring Ralph Fiennes. It's a great movie.
You know, you mentioned a whole lot in that, and there's a breakdown in communities. There's a breakdown in the way we've handled our nature in our relationships with each other over the course of many, many decades. And it seems like those that are in the spotlight, the ones that are getting all the attention, rightly or wrongly, are most all pushing the same types of secular agendas. And I'm not here to defend one thing or not one thing. That's not the position I'm trying to take, though I do have a definite opinion on it. The thing I'm trying to say, though, is that our society has always been about individual expression, for sure, but having the ability to be seen, understood, heard, listened to, adopted if you want, put into community if you want. People could go down a very secular road. They can go down a very religious road and everything else. But now what's ending up happening is that there's this trend toward making these things very normalized that just aren't. They just aren't. Mm-hmm. I mean, I understand people always say, well, it's a new normal and I'm just old. Bull, you're just old. You know, things are different. Okay, I get that. Generationally, things do change. They do evolve. They do adapt. But everything has been done in such a rush, in such an explicit manner, that you can see the decay of other principled things being swept right under the current with this stuff.
I agree with what you're saying, and I think that that's true. I think my only qualm with it is I think there tends to be, and this will likely probably happen with me over time, is there tends to be a, I don't want to say an out of sight, out of mind, because it's not, but there tends to be a chosen position by people who make, not you, but by people who have made that argument to ignore some of the things that kind of erupted during their time. A prime example is the sexual revolution. A bunch of people went to Woodstock and were boinking each other for weeks at a time. So this whole progressivism isn't brand new. Some of it is. Some of it is.
But there was always a thought, though, Wolf, that when you finally became an adult and you finally got into the quote unquote work world, that things would change.
But instead,
and now what's happening is people are coming out of that world and they're changing the work world. Yeah, they're changing everything else. And I'm not, 100 years from now, people are going to look back and think I was just ancient the way I was talking about. Perhaps I am. But for now, what you can very clearly see is that the amount of chaos is ramped up, specifically because the amount of parameters that we put around what we consider normalized or civilized or whatnot continue to be frayed, continue to be
well, I think it was, forgive me for saying this, but I think it was, in that instance, it was an out of sight, out of mind thing for a lot of people, because a lot of these people who went to Woodstock, went into our educational system, they became politicians, they became leaders within our country, and they allowed this to happen. And they pushed it.
Always going to say that.
So that my point being is that they advocated for this stuff internally, and now just because we here are noticing it in the limelight because it's now being pushed out doesn't mean that it hasn't always been there. So I guess my whole thing is, I'm not saying either is better. I'm not criticizing individuals who haven't been a part of that. I'm criticizing the fact that there has always been a decay occurring, and unfortunately we've now reached the threshold of people getting too far. Just like with like when the argument, for example, with the hyperbole surrounding climate change. We can talk about that till we're blue in the face. Science would suggest that no matter what we do, we're already down that path. We can change the sky. We could do as many things as we possibly can within technological ability up until maybe terraforming. Up until terraforming. We don't have that technology quite yet. So we're on a path, and we're going to have to endure that path. Now, we might be able to lessen it, but I can't possibly think of any studies that suggest that by doing X, based off of what a politician tells us or what the conglomerate of scientists tell us, that we will 100% absolutely, without a single shadow of a doubt, influence something to such a high degree that we don't face any consequences. Because that's what this comes down to, right? A lot of this comes down to trying to avoid the consequences of decisions in the past. So, for example, when it comes to like smoking is a prime example. A lot of people who smoked like chimneys for the longest time, while the big tobacco industry knew about the negative effects, the adverse effects of their product. While these people did that, they developed the long-term problems associated with what they're potentially facing now. And instead of realizing that it was a personal choice and trying to not have that happen within other industries, they demonized one particular industry so that the same exact thing, which by the way was also invested in by that one industry, fats and sugars, became the problem that it is today. So no one really learned from anything. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Well, like there's this inability or lack of desire.
That's letting the foxes run the hen house. And that's the same thing, the same argument we use all the time with governmental agencies and regulators and things like that. Because, it wasn't that many decades ago that a greater amount of per capita dollars went to private citizen employees with pensions, with manufacturing base, all that kind of stuff. That's no longer true. The best paying jobs in a per capita basis are with governmental agencies. They have security through retirement. They have better plans, 401k. All this stuff is deemed better. Now, why do you think that is? Because the people that create the jobs were the ones we voted into office to create bigger bureaucracies. How do you stay in power? It's all about a power thing that we've always talked about. Yeah. And that's probably a thing to unpack for another day. But the reality is if we continue to allow as I said, the foxes to run the hen house, then you can't expect anything except a bloodbath.
And anything to change.
And maybe lack of eggs.
Well, that kind of segues us into a side adjacent topic that I mentioned during the monologue, the factory fires that have been going on for the last year. This is totally in the same type of category discussion, so I thought it would fit in quite well. Now, there have been quite a lot of factory fires in 2022, and no one really seems to be talking too much about this. As mentioned a little bit ago, the Resolink, am I saying that right? Resolink
yeah.
report.
Supply Chain Resiliency Company.
Yeah, which came from supplychaindigital.com. All this information comes from a particular article that I'll link right here. Says the factory fires were the single biggest cause of supply disruption in 2022. Not port congestion, not extreme weather, not war in Ukraine, or an unnamed virus that we can't mention for fear of being censored. Factory fires. Now, according to this report, Resolink blames the spike in fires on gaps in regulatory and process execution, as well as on a shortage of skilled labor in warehouses. In 2022, there was an incredibly large increase in labor disruption around the globe, with a 92% year-on-year increase on this front. Now, there's a few examples of this, which include labor protests at the Foxconn iPhone factory in China, which was caused by, if you're in the know and you have any, grasp on what's happening worldwide, lockdown policy measures in the central Chinese city of Zhengzhou. This sparked a mass walkout by its largely 20,000 migrant workforces. Management offered bonuses to encourage them to return, only to backtrack on those bonuses, which sparked further protests. Additionally, another example includes the Felixstowe port strike in the UK, which was caused by the port of Felixstowe considering outsourcing their workers. These workers went on a 9-day strike in an additional dispute about a pay increase, which resulted in $800 million in disrupted trade of clothing and electronic components. Now, geographically, North America has experienced the most disruptions, accounting for over half, 51%, of the total alerts issued followed closely by Europe and then Asia. Resolink's data is gathered by its global event monitoring AL engine, EventWatch, which collects information and monitors news on 400 types of disruptions across 104 million sources, ranging from traditional news, social media platforms, wire services, videos, and government reports. So, to the individuals in the room who specifically work within that industry, what in the flying F is happening?
A lot. Yeah. The labor disruptions, I mean, you didn't even mention the ongoing concerns with the ports on the West Coast. They still haven't figured out. They're insisting that they will, but the port workers, the labor unions, for those who work on the docks, have been going back and forth with those ports over a lot of stuff for, oh my gosh, close to a year now. I think so. And then the rail workers, they actually got basically blocked by Congress from going on strike in a move they typically do get struck down like that, but they fought for months to get some specifics with the railroads covered, and they did get some pay increase and a couple other things, but they were particularly fighting for, I think it was additional sick days.
7, wasn't it like 7 sick days?
I don't want to
ridiculously small like that.
I don't want to misquote exactly what they were looking for, but
there are a dozen different unions involved.
Right, there was quite a few.
Some agreed, some didn't, and
it was coming to a head. Eventually, Congress stepped in and blocked them from striking.
So labor disruptions are not really the news here, in my opinion.
It wasn't even on the top. I don't remember. It
top
certainly
10.
Didn't make the top 10.
No, it's not really the news here. The news is the 85% year-over-year increase in factory fires.
I think I've heard people mention the fires before, and some are like, well, there's always random fires. I'm like, this is a pretty big increase in fires. So,
yeah. Supply chain disruptions have been going on for as long as supply chain has been invented, which is probably thousands of years ago. And, supply chain in general is a very complicated process and series of interlinked modalities that creates a situation where we have raw materials from Mother Earth all the way to finished goods on a shelf that we all can buy. And everything in between is interconnected. And those connections are balanced amongst each other. They have to be in different ways, or things get very volatile. Now, there are things built into the system. There are buffers to allow that variability. I think if we talked about the the Suez Canal. This was just a couple of years ago. There was a giant 40,000 TEU, which is 20-foot equivalent unit ship called the Ever Given that was stuck in the middle of the Suez Canal.
Sideways, right?
That's not what the Suez Canal was built for. Yeah, it went aground.
Which how?
Which
how does that happen?
Yeah,
they said
there's
they
a
were
lot
turning
and that most of that cargo's still there, by the way. Never got offloaded. There's all kinds of other periphery things that went on with that, but that there stalled out a certain degree of European commerce for a considerable period of time, and that was one event.
That's not even
that was
considering
before all the shutdowns.
the Evergreen ship that ran aground in Chesapeake Bay. That was a couple months ago too. I mean, that's resulted in not just to consider all of the backlog on supply chain. There's also the question of the environmental impact of all of that. I just did a whole story on this the other day with the oysters in the region. So you have the issues with everything on the ship being affected, and then you have the oyster supply in Massachusetts being affected because the ship ran aground and destroyed a bunch of the bottom of the Chesapeake Bay. So there's a lot of webbing.
So
there's a huge amount of it.
So I guess the question I'm getting at, because those are things that, like, I think those are things that are like that happen. An 85% increase in factory fires.
It does not happen.
That doesn't happen.
No.
Well, and then
Especially
that kind of thing, without further explanation, it's only natural that you begin to speculate.
Yeah.
And speculation leads to conspiracy and conspiracy theories, and then off we go.
The fact is that the food supply in this country and many other countries are all interconnected as well. And what we're talking about with these fires, a lot of them, and I did not see that the article broke down this into further increments, but I noticed that the article itself on supply chain, whatever
Digital.
online,
Supply chain digital.
that was specific to the food industry. That's what they cater to a lot in that series of articles. So I'm pretty sure they were talking about that in context with rendering factories and things like that.
Yeah.
Chickens, meat, poultry, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's there's really a lot of agendas that are kind of lining up against that.
Mm-hmm. And like, we're not implying anything.
Sure
we're implying everything. No, I think what I'm trying to get at is it just seems a little too on the nose.
You love to talk about Occam's razor, right?
It just seems too on the nose.
There's kind of things that you look right down Main Street and go,
huh?
Well, really? Okay, 1 + 1 is not 4.
Here's the reason I say that is because that industry, and I say this not because I have two individuals who work within it that are in that industry, but the industry is full of a lot of relatively intelligent people. We're not talking about granted there's outliers, but we're not talking about like this industry that has people who don't know what they're doing in a lot of ways. I think there's people in that industry that have a lot of experience, decades, I would argue, and all of this just seems to happen a year and a half after the greatest foreign policy and local American policy shutdown of all time.
Well, there's always explanations for everything. I mean, think about it. You could also argue, okay, we went a year and a half, 2 years without any thorough inspections. Things were put off for later. It's the same thing. You hear people saying, "Oh, I there's an increase in people getting, these long-term illnesses in the last couple of years." Could it be for this reason, or could it be because they just didn't go to the doctor for 2 years?
Well, I get the point I'm getting at is the people who made these executive decisions plan everything. They plan everything. They don't just randomly have something come up on their. You plan everything, and you're not in the government. You're not running a $400 trillion company or industry. So when it comes to that was a good one. I'll give you a little applaud there. We don't have the applause.
I run the secret organization, shadow government. I am the ruler.
Well, so I think the thing you have to think about with the supply chain issues are there overarching things. Like many years ago, there was the levees broke along the Mississippi, and there was floods, and it took out some bridges, and the railroads, some of their main arteries through the Midwest were cut off because of that, and there had to be a lot of reroutes. And those are catastrophic issues. Now, the last couple of years is catastrophic, but it's more
an implemented catastrophe.
But what you look at with a situation like we're talking about today is you're looking at one link. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, you're looking at one of the links that is most focused on by the parties involved with that link. So if Bale and I were talking about our specific business, we know what's going on right there. We can say all these circumstances are happening to us, they're going to affect us for a whole lot of reasons, and they do. But we know what's happening here. We have a set of processes in place. And so do these rendering plants, so these factories, so all these people. They know what they're doing in their supply chain side. They know what they're doing to keep things up to a certain standard. It's not like because a year and a half off of an inspector coming in that suddenly fires broke out everywhere because they forgot to take down one of the bales of hay that was in
Which
there.
I think maybe there's one or two instances of that, but I get the point I'm getting down is like specifically within your guys' industry, there is a hyper, at least for a period of time, a hyper planned forecasted procedure. In order to be able to get something from point A to point B, you have to be able to forecast it to some degree. You have to be able to tell people within look at Amazon, within literal hours now, maybe even minutes, depending on what type of delivery service you're getting, they can determine when your product from point A will arrive to point B, something that is abnormal throughout all of human history up until very recently. And you're telling me when we're at the point of fine-tuning that to the point of having one of the cleanest logistical running systems of all time, that all of a sudden an 85% increase of factory fires happens by chance in 1 year? Really? And the moon's made of cheese too?
Well, supply chain people would tell you the factory fires have nothing to do with them.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. But that's what I'm saying.
But they do. That's my point. They do. All these things are interconnected. You have a breakdown on how you discover raw materials, if you have a breakdown in personnel from making finished goods, if you have a breakdown in any of these components along the way, it's affecting the whole thing. So if you want to affect the supply chain, on the other side of the country, then you initiate a problem on this side of the country that is connected to that side of the country because you throw everything in between off balance.
Well, that brings us to the next segue, kind of in association with the giant C word that so many social media companies don't like. The Great Chicken Feed Conspiracy.
Oh my gosh. Before you get started, I first heard about this, even though it's been going around for a while. I first heard about this officially and actually was like, what are they talking about? Because a couple days ago, I went to goat yoga.
Oh God.
We're
not gonna give too much detail. I was there and the owner.
Is this a bad story?
Oh my God.
No.
Why?
All I will say is that the owner of the farm that I was at mentioned something about the chicken feed in passing when someone was asking, because her chickens were laying eggs, and the owner of the farm and the other person who was there said, "Oh, I know how chickens don't lay eggs in the winter. So that's kind of cool that your chickens are laying eggs." And then the owner of the farm said, "Oh, that's the big conspiracy right now, with the chicken feed." And I was like, what are they talking about? And then I went home, told you. I won't go into the goat yoga story. That's a whole other thing.
That's another day. Now, yeah, I've seen the conspiracy online prior to that, but it was kind of like some wide-eyed, crazy-eyed looking person.
I swear when I brought it up, I started seeing more stuff about it because the algorithm, Instagram heard me.
Yeah, your phone listens to you. Yeah, that's probably the case. So for those of you who are not in the know, we are not implying that it does exist because I don't know if it does after researching it. But in 2022, around 58 million egg-laying hens have been killed in an attempt to control the bird flu virus. Now, this is not a prediction, but it is a warning. Mainstream media outlets are already discussing whether H5N1 might be the next virological menace. They're already talking about it. Avian flu normally attacks bird populations, but recently it tore through a Spanish mink farm in October of 2021. Now, this is somewhat concerning because H5N1 influenza normally is found in birds, and it doesn't normally move to mammals. The receptor of the influenza binds to the upper airways of the birds, and those receptors are less common within mammals, specifically within the mammalian upper airway. Now, with that event at that facility occurring, more than 50,000 minks were killed, and their carcasses were destroyed, and apparently none of the workers were infected. Now, I don't want to get into a discussion about the likely inevitable upcoming bird flu problem. As of 2019, massive sicknesses are in vogue, and frankly, I don't and I won't be surprised in the slightest if another one occurs this decade, sponsored by Pfizer and subsidized by Big Daddy government. You can disagree with me all you want, but that is literally every commercial now on almost every single entertainment platform is a big Pfizer with the silent P. So kind of proves my point. Now, with this avian flu wreaking havoc among the bird population, sorry, not burp, a theory has recently popped up amongst owners of chickens that chicken feed is actually to blame for the sky-high egg prices. Some individuals have even gone so far as to suggest that feed producers had intentionally made their product deficient, stopping backyard egg production, which in turn forces people to buy eggs at inflated prices. Now, when interviewed by the Associated Press, North Carolina State University poultry industry specialist Ken Anderson disagreed, stating, because of high-path avian influenza, we've had to depopulate millions of laying hens. And when you take that many chickens out of the production, there's fewer eggs. When there's fewer eggs, the price goes up, which makes sense.
Demand.
Supply and demand. Totally makes sense. Mm-hmm. Now, agricultural officials in multiple states, including North Carolina and Georgia, have told the Associated Press that they have received no reports of widespread problems. Yodam Ophir, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, an assistant professor at the University of Buffalo who focuses on misinformation, also claimed that it's common for people to look for scapegoats during periods of social anxiety. The official narrative is kind of reminding us that we are sometimes vulnerable to the randomness of nature, which sounds totally on the nose.
That would be a great thing to start, is scapegoat yoga, where you can just sit around and point fingers at each other and blame each other for everything.
Oh, I do that every day.
You've hit your threshold of 3 dad jokes an episode. You fulfilled your quota.
It was a good one. It was a good one.
That one was the best one
all the way
so
back
far.
around
That
to
one
the
was
goat
good.
yoga.
Yeah.
But as what he said, the randomness nature, I think that makes sense. I mean, no, okay, you have a differing opinion.
That statement is very innocuous. It makes sense generally. Sure. The randomness of nature. Now, again, this is why this gets so difficult, because the Wolf and Bulb, we're not a conspiracy podcast. We're not a conspiracy
climate
podcast.
Change random?
And it depends on who you ask.
See, this is
but this is, again, it's such an innocuous, vague response from somebody that it's like, okay, yes, I agree with that, but also, have you been around the last 3 years? Like, if all of this happened all at once, I would say that it makes a whole ton of sense, because there is a possibility of chaotic nature to all of that. But then also there is the 85% year-over-year increase in factory fires, which is mixed with the avian flu epidemic, which was in process. There have been instances where factories were, quote-unquote, farms were burned down because of the chickens. So I guess my whole thing is, all this happening at once is kind of too on the nose, especially when most of these companies and large businesses are all in bed together.
And they're all pushing things other than chicken.
Yes.
Grasshoppers.
Or plant-based alternatives that are just filled with vegetable bean oil, which is terrible for you. So yeah. It's just interesting. It's just a little interesting. And I don't want to say that any of these people, I'm not saying that it's intentional, but things are getting a little weird, and let's jump right into that. The avian flu has supposedly been responsible for around the 58 million chicken deaths. You can likely include turkeys in that as well, over the last year. Now, because of this, chicken farms have been yeeting their deceased chickens to the afterlife in a myriad of different ways. In 2021, PubMed.gov released an article that evaluated the potential efficacy of egg yolk antibodies, IgY, as a neutralizing agent against SARS-CoV-2. According to that article, our results show that, and this is quotes, our results show that the anti-spike S1 IgY showed significant neutralizing potency against SARS-CoV-2 pseudovirus, various spike protein mutants, and even SARS-CoV in vitro. It might be a feasible tool for the prevention and control of ongoing SARS-CoV-2.
Why weren't we told to drink egg yolks?
That's my point.
I'm joking.
That's my point.
This is not medical advice.
The big pharma's always used different mediums to grow the potential of vaccines, including eggs of different kinds. Mm-hmm. Is that what they're talking about here? That's a big no. That look.
You know how salad dressings have oils and then they have like egg base? Mm-hmm. Maybe this is about the stickiness of egg yolk.
I guess my
scientific brain is working overload.
I guess my point, and I want you guys to follow me on this, because this is where I am, and you guys can call me crazy, but this is my little metaphor that I'm going to paint out for you guys and our viewers and listeners. All of this happening in this 3-year span, and getting more and more hyper-focused and more flimsy as time goes on is a little confusing. So now follow me here. Big business, specifically food and big pharma, want an ample supply of people for their products. For years, the farming industry, especially when it comes to meat and eggs, has been demonized for high cholesterol, heart disease, etc. In so much that the federal government and medical industry for over 60 years have advocated for a high diet in grains, vegetable oils, and sugar. I mean, even recently, something about the Lucky Charms was better for you than a steak. Something ridiculous like that. It was brought out of context, but they was talking about frosted mini wheats or something ridiculous like that, which is basically just sugar and grains. You have your opinion on it, but they put it out. Now, this logically caused a lot of people over time to get larger and unhealthier, especially with the advances of technology that promotes people to sit all day. Now, in tandem with the rise of climate change hyperbole, billionaires realize that by investing in alternative plant-based, especially bean and soy-based sources of protein, they could continue to create a large pool of waiting applicants for their quote-unquote health industry, since almost all of the plant-based alternatives are incredibly bad for you. They circumvent any alternative argument by claiming that if we don't move entirely off traditional sources of protein, meat and eggs, for example, then the awaiting climate disaster will cause a litany of issues. You can't argue with the climate change hyperbole because it's seen as anti-science, quote unquote, to question authoritative sources for some reason, which is exactly what science is about. So to make that argument tells me you don't understand science. Consensus exists in a vacuum at times, but I guess that doesn't apply when you're on the side of quote unquote science. Feel free, by the way, to replace science with God if you like. You can't argue with the medical industry, you'll get censored. And if you attempt to fight their unilateral Borg-like bureaucratic thinking, you'll get fired. Celebrities endorse the narrative. Politicians endorse the narrative. Why, may you ask? Because they're in bed with big business billionaire plutocrats. Does it sound too crazy? Because here's the funny thing. Let's talk about Bill Gates. He's a perfect example. We've talked about him before, but he's a great example of this. He has stakes in the following companies. 3.6% stake in Microsoft, which is now valued at $2 trillion. He owns 7 million shares of Berkshire Hathaway, which is valued at $991 billion. Gates and his associates, which I believe was a prince of Saudi Arabia, I can't remember his name, own 95% of Four Seasons Hotel and Resorts, which is valued at $10 billion. He is the largest single shareholder of the Canadian National Railway at 10.04%, which the company itself is valued at $85 billion. He has investments in Caterpillar Inc., which is valued at $136 billion. UPS, which is valued at $155 billion. FedEx, valued at $48 billion. And Waste Management Inc., valued at $62 billion. To ignore some of his hypocrisy in statements is completely nonsensical at this point. As of February 7th from CNBC, he claimed that he'll continue using his private jet and campaigning on climate change. He claimed that because he spends billions on climate innovation, that he's okay with being part of the problem by paying for the offsets, but also part of the solution since he's doing so much good. Good. Despite this, he insisted that rich, quote unquote, rich countries owe the entire world by getting their emissions down to zero as fast as they can. But he's going to continue flying in his private jet. Explain.
I think he's going to get a horse. And he's going to start galloping. It's going to be like Forrest, you know?
Start running across the country?
Yeah. He's going to grow a big beard.
Why are you doing dad jokes too?
Bill Gates.
What is this? What is this?
Bill Gates is going to be, not just jogging. He's going to be sprinting. He's going to be like,
look,
Bill, go.
We've talked about the billionaire influence, like the big six, like media organizations owned by 6 individuals, 15 to 15 individuals, and all of them owning well in excess of $430 billion of the market and hundreds of companies. We've talked about that. When you look at someone like Bill Gates, and you look at his open negative perspective on things like traditional proteins, such as meat, chicken, poultry, eggs, and then his alternatives, which are made from things that have been, in the most part, considered bad for you, it's kind of hard to see any alternative with that.
Listen, Elizabeth Holmes drank only green juice.
What are you doing?
That's the future of us all.
Well, I think you're not too far from home there.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about this an hour ago. People start doing things, and eventually they get to a point where there's no need for anything else in their lives, so it now becomes their legacy. Now, their legacy, from our standpoint, can be a good one or a bad one, or it can be a combination of those things. From a Bill Gates standpoint, I've seen the videos. He can see that there's a declining population worldwide in a whole bunch of places. He owns a hell of a lot of farmland. He owns Caterpillar, as you mentioned. He owns technologies. There's a lot of things that line up. Hell, he's involved with the ability to manage weather to a degree.
What do you think his email inbox looks like?
He doesn't even use 365. Bottom line is if you're my age, okay, and you're trying to change the world, do you want it changed 5 generations from now when you're gone, or do you want it changed now? And if you have the money and the technologies and the wherewithal, and you think you're right because you're an elite, and all these elites think they're right, because they all do, even the ones that I think are right.
Well, here's the thing that makes me laugh is like, I'm like, when you're that powerful, not even going to go say rich, like money means nothing when you're that rich.
Correct.
Okay, it just literally means almost nothing, and everything at the same time. But like, you're not going to go out and be like, I got a budget, right? That's not what they're considering. Do you really care at all about any of these things we're talking about?
No, you don't.
But I'm honestly wondering, like, how do you?
People care about humanity?
No.
Sure they do.
Yeah,
Why
you
wouldn't
said
they?
people. We're not talking about a normal guy. Like, this is the thing that this goes back to the celebrity thing that we talked about.
He was a normal guy. And you just
40, 50 years ago.
Yeah, but you were talking about this earlier about celebrities. They're just people.
But that's my point being is they're just people who are up until a point controlled by the group of people that are helping them be celebrities. Bill Gates is above that threshold.
And then they control the people.
Yeah, so he's so the thing of he's just a guy or he cares about certain things is like saying, oh yeah, Napoleon cared about the people that supported his country.
I'm sure he did, and he died on an island alone. What do you mean, no?
I don't think Napoleon gave a single flying F about any of the people that he then had conquered at that point in time. Now, I'm not saying that makes him a bad person. I'm saying that I don't think he considered it because he was at such a point in power where he basically controlled the entire world. So you can't
use the word conquer. Okay, that goes back to what Bae was talking about. It's about power, right?
Okay.
So if you have all the power you ever want or need, or if you think you need more, what are you going to do if you feel the world has gone in a wrong direction? What are you going to do? You just ignore it? Say,
yeah, but that doesn't mean that he cares about the people that it impacts.
I didn't say he cared about the people.
You're being awfully judgmental of Bill over there.
Big difference.
I don't know if I even believe that because if he did, he wouldn't fly in a private jet.
There are people you watch these movies and you have we need to wipe out. There's a bad character, and who snaps his what the guy snaps his fingers in Marvel, and half the universe is gone because there's too many damn people.
Yeah,
we got to start over. So there's some people that think that humans are a plague on everything, and there are other people that think, yes, they are, but we can turn them back into something else by managing it in a more holistic way.
Yeah, Hitler thought that.
They all do.
So my point
just
being,
from different directions.
My point being is that I don't think he really cares. I think it's more a matter of that absolute power, gaining all of that, and then doing something that maybe I don't even know if he'd be proud of it. Because at this point, it's kind of like, dude, you are one of maybe in the top 100 people in the world that has done more to impact the world in your time on this earth. And now you're going to impact the future, which you won't even be a part of, nor can you control. I would agree with you that he cares about these things if he wasn't flying around in a jet, if he didn't have multiple houses.
Where's the line drawn for you between someone like Mr. Beast and Bill Gates? You've given a lot of leeway to Mr. Beast for the same arguments that you're making against Bill Gates.
Bill Gates is the top 100 people.
So after 100,
to own everything. Bill Gates has multiple businesses under his conglomerate of Beast Enterprises or whatever it is. Bill Gates could be considered a Rockefeller. My line is when you start to be a monopoly. That's where my line is. If Mr. Beast decides to buy up all of CNBC or all of Fox Holdings or all the mainstream media and all that jazz, and then starts investing in his competitors and buying them like Disney does, then I'll start to criticize him. I will, because at that point, it's not about impacting people. It's about controlling the narrative for your own personal bias. And Bill Gates is very, very transparent about his perspective on it.
Isn't this what people do in general, though?
No.
You don't believe you're right?
That's different. If I'm in an argument with someone, the discussion of whether I'm right or not, depending on my perspective and understanding of what an argument actually is at points in time irrelevant to the greater picture. And I understand that. If I have a conversation with you and I think that I'm right about something, but it turns out that I'm wrong, I'll admit that I'm wrong.
So if you've gone through 40 years more of your life and you've put down 10 key pillars or dictates that you believe would better society as a whole, and now you're a multi-billionaire, and you have the ability to put some of these things into place, would you?
Against people's will?
That's what we're talking about.
Well, that's my question.
That's what people do.
Yeah.
They start measuring. They start going, okay, I've got the right picture here. Mm-hmm. I've gone over it with my WEF buddies.
Yeah.
And I've got the right picture. And so we need to implement this. Well, there's going to be a lot of collateral damage. I know, and I hate that.
There's a similar question. There's a trolley on a train, and it's going down the trainway, and there's a group of people on one side and one person on the other side. I would let the trolley go. That's what I would do. I would let it run its course, and whatever path it goes down, because that's the ethical thing to do. People keep making this argument of, the 10 pillars. Yeah, my 10 pillars are for me. They're not for everyone else. They're not. Because I can make the argument, the world would be a better place if everyone believed like me.
So you don't try to get anybody to believe in what you believe in.
It's not about getting someone to believe what I believe in. No, it's not. It's about getting them to understand what I believe in.
You're doing it right now.
It's about getting people to understand what I believe in, and if they choose to believe in it, so be it.
Okay, you're a live and let live person. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean everybody is. That usually doesn't mean that these people that rise to certain levels of power are that way at all.
Mm-hmm. Which is why I think he doesn't care.
No, this is why we really, really, really need a Gandalf in real life. We need the Istari to show up and guide us. Well, that's hopefully one, I guess you could equate Bill Gates to Saruman.
I know you're bringing levity to this intentionally because this conversation makes you uncomfortable. That's okay. It makes me uncomfortable too.
I'm just saying you can equate all things to Lord of the Rings characters.
You can. And I agree, but there's also a story behind that too, because just like with, I don't know, a similar Gandalf character, what's his name from Harry Potter? Dumbledore. Gandalf had flaws. So did Dumbledore. And they both actually acknowledge their flaws within the story multiple times. Someone like Bill Gates, unfortunately, has yet to do that. He doubles down.
Maybe publicly. You never know. What if we got Bill Gates' diary tomorrow and we read it and he's just in constant inner turmoil? He's crying into his pages saying, I can't eat bugs, but I have to for the betterment of humanity. He's weeping. He's weeping.
She's doing all the jokes today.
For someone who's a public figure, that does matter, though. And that's why there's such an issue, because the people who are celebrities, back to Mr. Beast and the Sam Smiths of the world and all those individuals, if they're transparent with what they believe, I can respect them, and I do respect Bill Gates for being transparent. But if there's like some weird, strange, power-based control of I'm forcing everyone to do something because I believe that I'm better than everyone, I have a real big problem with that.
Or simply not telling you, right? I mean, he's leaving it up to us and everybody else like us to try to connect dots.
He's been pretty transparent about what he says multiple times, especially about his...
what he's given us so far.
Especially about his private jet, which I think is a huge
You think the government's transparent about anything?
It depends.
No.
Depends what we're talking about. I mean...
almost anything.
Well, I mean, let's be honest here. The current administration has been pretty forthcoming about what they're going to do in a lot of ways, and then they've lied about it and then pretended that they didn't lie about it. So, I mean, that's about as bold-faced as you can be.
My point is that there's always a layer to things. There's always an onion to peel. The government doesn't tell us most of the things it knows. There's very little transparency, and that's why everything on Earth is redacted, simply because there's a bunch of people that don't think we, as the public, can handle it. That's the main reason. They'll tell you it's for our protection.
Yeah.
What does that really mean?
Nothing.
Is anybody protected because we didn't know for sure who shot JFK?
No.
The only people that protected are the people that are dead now.
Well, I think, back to the chicken feed. I don't really know if this, if companies are providing faulty chicken feed. I would argue that it's probably not likely intentional. That would be my argue, because I don't see any alternative. Would I argue that it's unintentional? No. I don't really know what position it is. It's not. So I would leave it up to you. I'll leave it up to you, the viewer, to determine the truth for yourself. The real problem, in my opinion, with all this goes back to society's unhealthy relationships with celebrities, the wealthy, public servants, all these individuals. Somewhere along the line, it got into everyone's head that these people, quote, who know better, do simply because they do. And the meritocracy only goes so far, in my opinion. You can have all the credentials in the world. That doesn't mean that you're unilaterally and universally right about everything. Now, am I arguing the merits of their intelligence? No, I think Bill Gates and the individuals like him, the big six corporations that own almost all of the mainstream media or all the major, farming companies, all that stuff. I think these individuals are very intelligent. I'm not arguing their intelligence. I'm arguing the merits of their intent. Now, either way, I don't think we're really going to know, but I think that there are some definitely interesting things happening as of right now. And
As
all
always.
I would agree.
very coincidental.
You can draw your own conclusions.
Indeed.
Any beautiful stories any parables?
Parables?
Any parables to end the episode with?
There was once a person on the beaches of Southern California who had a pet goat, and they were an entrepreneur, and they said, I know what would make a great way for a bunch of dumb older millennials to take money from them. Goat yoga.
We should have an episode in the history of goat yoga. It'll be about 10 minutes long.
I'm just...
We should,
can't
though.
stop thinking about
No,
it now.
and we're going to have to talk about it eventually. But yeah, that wraps up our episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you want more content from The Wolf and Bull, you can find it via our Instagram at The Wolf and Bull. We normally, as I said before, have episodes every Thursday and videos every Friday. If you liked what you saw on YouTube, a like, a comment, or a subscription would be greatly appreciated. Even if you didn't like it, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you again, and we will catch you next week.
Bye.